the money printers are going to be turned on. There's so much chaos in the world right now. Bitcoin is the world's best liquidity sponge. The move that we've seen in gold going from 2,000 to 3,000 is unprecedented. And usually gold moves first and then Bitcoin follows, but even more violently to the upside. Over 90% of all the Bitcoin to be mined has been mined, right? Over 19 million of the 21 million has been discovered. We had the launch of the ETF, and that was pretty much the big story of 2024, that and MicroStrategy and further corporate adoption. And now we're in 2025, and the story is governments are here.
Boom. Rob, how we doing?
I'm doing well, Kyle. How are you?
Fantastic, man. Thanks for making time. And we're going to chat Bitcoin and news. Bitcoin news, you're the founder. And just talk to me a little bit first about how you got into this position. What drives you to build this brand, this business, Bitcoin News?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, since I can remember, I've been fascinated by politics, history, how the world works, and economics plays a big part in that, right? So, became a gold bug Austrian economics head in 2010 or so. Spent the next decade knowing about Bitcoin, but not getting too deep into it until COVID happened and became a fanatic. And during that same time that I was working on my Austrian game and whatnot, I was fulfilling my profession as a media producer, right? I worked in advertising, working in production houses in New York City. My last job before Bitcoin News was as a producer for a travel show at Barstool Sports. So over a decade plus of working in film, video, YouTube, social media, and after getting bitten by the Bitcoin bug in 2020, I knew I couldn't live honestly and truthfully without making my profession be Bitcoin in some way. So by beginning of 2023, I joined on to Bitcoin News as a video guy, and then quickly took on a leadership role, and then was able to purchase the company come September 2023, and I've been running it ever since.
Wow, I forgot how much we had in common. Not just a passion for Bitcoin, but a background in media. That's super cool. My main take, just going into this, I was like, man, you get so bullish studying Bitcoin itself, like the technicals, understanding 21 million, censorship resistance, all this stuff. But then you go and you look at what's happening in the world, how Bitcoin is being adopted and the different people that are getting involved. And you just get like 1,000 times more bullish after that. So I want to ask you, what are some of the top stories, top news events of the last, call it 6 to 12 months, that just really emphasize Bitcoin's not necessarily success in an end state, but its progression?
Yeah, I mean that's the beautiful thing about Bitcoin is that every year, every month, there's a new narrative, there's a new aspect of it that pops up because between the mining and the philosophy and the grassroots adoption, there's so many ways in which Bitcoin can touch a person in their life on an individual basis, and that just creates endless fodder for content, right? Over the last 6 months to a year, I would say one of the coolest stories is the BitAxe revolution. The fact that Bitcoin mining has grown from people in their basements running computers to mine Bitcoin to, as of recently, these ultra mega mining farms in places like Texas where they're using up to a gigawatt of power. That's enough to power tens of thousands of homes. They're using it strictly for Bitcoin mining. So there was this centralization process of giant mining farms, whether it was originally in China during the 2010s to now in America. But over the last year, we've seen the growth of these BitX devices, right? So it's really crazy how these things are made. They buy the mining rigs from China, which are multiple thousands of dollars, probably like $4,000 or $5,000 to buy a S21 from Bitmain, and these S21s are filled with about I believe it's like 100 to 200 ASIC chips, right? So it's just these little chips that are about this big, and so they dismantle these machines, take out these individual ASICs, and then put them on a singular board, and you can mine Bitcoin from your desk using as much energy as about a light bulb, right? And so, of course, the odds of finding a block with one of these things are almost astronomical, like 1 in a couple million per year chance if you run it all year. But it's like a lottery ticket, right? And actually, the odds are probably better than you winning the Powerball. But because this lottery runs every 10 minutes, there's a new block that's found. And that's the amazing thing, is that over the last month alone, 2 BitXs have found blocks, right? And haters from the beginning are like, "Oh, this is dumb. This is pointless. This is not really doing much. You're never going to find a block with this." Well, they have been found, and in a meaningful way. Bitcoin mining is just, the idea of it becoming decentralized is becoming more common now, right? And so I think that we're going to see BitAxes be more popular, whether as a cool science project or people looking into the lottery function of it all, people who don't even know what Bitcoin is, but knowing that if you just plug this machine in and connect it to your Wi-Fi and use as much energy as a light bulb, you have a chance of winning $250,000 every 10 minutes. I think that would attract a lot of people. And the more that this hash rate is decentralized and spread out around the world in different people's houses, it just makes the Bitcoin network even more robust and harder to kill.
Fascinating. I was not expecting you to go that direction, but I love it, and it's definitely one of the biggest challenges that Bitcoin faces, in my opinion, is the centralization of the mining, because you've got these pools, right? That basically all the different large scale miners will join a pool, a mining pool, and allocate their hash rate towards that pool. So at this point, my understanding is that almost 50% of the hash rate can be traced back to, what is it? Ant pool,
Ant
right?
pool, yeah.
Do you have any comments just on how and why individuals are running these things? Is it just out of, they maybe just want to contribute something to the security of Bitcoin and also have the off chance of winning some large amount of Bitcoin? Or are many people just saying, hey, let me just plug one of these in and join a pool and I'll get a few cents off of it and I'll just, sort of feel good about what I'm doing?
Yeah, in terms of, I think there's two different things, right? Whether trying to decentralize the hash rate or trying to actually earn Bitcoin off of one of these BitX miners. I think the more noble cause is probably to decentralize the hash rate, and if you're in it just for that, then it makes sense to completely solo mine and run the chance that you're never going to earn anything off of this little machine, which costs about $150 to buy. But if you want to earn a couple of sats, you can probably earn, I think it's roughly around like 10 sats a day. So if it's a tenth of a penny, right? Right now. But hey, I mean, sats are sats. And if you have a long-term view and you want to pass that down to your grandchildren, that'll probably be worth something.
10 sats, tenth of a penny or 1 penny? I can't do the math off my head.
But yeah, at 100 grand, it's a tenth of a penny, right? It's
tenth of a penny. Okay.
Yeah.
It's funny because I would much rather have the 10 sats than the penny.
Yeah. They add up, right? They add up.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, just to circle back to people who don't know about the miner centralization issue. So Bitmain is a large Bitcoin miner manufacturer, and they run Antpool. And Antpool is actually behind a lot of the other pools as well. So I think Antpool itself probably has about 25 to 30% of the hash rate, and then they're behind about another 20% of the total Bitcoin hash rate. And the reason they're able to do this and convince people to join their pool is because they offer FPPS, which means that you are able, with Bitcoin mining, even these large pools can go long amounts of time without finding a block. And so if you are not taking FPPS, you have to just wait and bite it, right? You have to deal with that variance and not be paid possibly for days. But if you're part of a FPPS pool, the pool owner will handle the financial burden and pay you for your share of hash rate on a daily basis, and make sure that you are receiving Bitcoin even if no blocks are found. So they need to put Bitcoin up front in order to run these things, and only a large operation can really handle that. So it's yeah, I mean, we've got pools like Ocean who are against that, and just paying people out when a block is found. But yeah, it does seem to be an issue, a growing one, that in the past, when a pool got too big, people would just leave and join another one. But because these guys are willing to pay you per share on a regular basis, it is convincing enough people to stay with them. So hopefully the word gets out that this is an issue, and Bitcoin has this amazing ability to have an immune system, right? To self repair, to find out areas where it is weak, and the incentive structure of all the different parties involved sort of evens itself out. But we'll see in the coming months and years ahead whether that actually holds true.
Yeah. So one of the stories that I highlighted, I thought you were going to go to, is just around how much Bitcoin has become politicized. You know, it's not a political thing. It doesn't care about your skin color, where you're from, borders, nothing like it. Bitcoin doesn't discriminate. But we've seen the new Trump administration and the people around him being more open towards Bitcoin. And with that, you've got people who are anti that group now associating Bitcoin with that group. So now you've got a growing cohort of people who, when they hear Bitcoin, they hear Trump, right? So do you think that that's something that's good, bad, hindering adoption? Do you agree? Like, is that happening? Or am I just a little bit in the echo chamber and Bitcoin is not actually politicized?
Bitcoin has definitely been politicized over the last 12 months or so. Having it be a campaign issue, having Trump be the first candidate to, or major candidate to speak at the Bitcoin conference. And I mean, since he's been elected, he's actually held through with his promises, right? When it came to Bitcoiners, he freed Ross within the first month. He had SOB 121, which was a SEC ruling that said that banks would not be able to custody Bitcoin without paying a lot of money or having a lot of collateral in order to do so. And then thirdly, he created the strategic Bitcoin reserve, right? Saying that none of the Bitcoin under the government's position can be sold, and that they will look into ways to acquire more Bitcoin in a budget neutral way. So he's definitely made promises to Bitcoiners, and he's withheld those promises, right? Those have come true. And in terms of it being politicized, yeah, I mean, that is sort of an issue, right? To say, since the strategic Bitcoin reserve was made by executive order, that means that if the Democrats come in as president in 2028, then they, with the stroke of a pen, could also just get rid of it and dump all the Bitcoin, right? So there is some concern, you could say, about that. But at the end of the day, Bitcoin was going to be an issue that was picked up by one party before the other, and it was going to be used. And so I think over time, Bitcoin will just be understood by all as the right path to go down. But in these beginning phases, it definitely, I think this was the path it was going to go down. One party was going to pick it up, and it was just the Republicans this time, and they won. So now it's front and center, and it attracts some ire from people from the other side. But at the end of the day, Bitcoin is on a path towards world dominance, and nothing, no politics can stop that.
I love it, man. I don't know too many people that are more bullish than me, but you might be one of them. So SAB 121, I just looked it up, is basically prevents banks from custodying digital assets, right? So the SEC now, that was rescinded. So now theoretically, legally, banks can custody Bitcoin, which changes the game just radically, right? I was thinking about this the other day, actually. It was like, why are so many Bitcoin companies building for the transition to the Bitcoin world versus building for a fully Bitcoinized world? And I just think, personally, tell me if you think this is just a little cuckoo, but I think we're just not as far from Bitcoin just being really integrated into our lives on a financial, like once banks custody Bitcoin, it's going to be right there in your Bank of America Chase app, right next to your dollars. You're going to have your Bitcoin account right there. All these businesses that are exchanges and swaps and services, like, do they all go obsolete? It's just kind of a thought I was having of, there's some companies like Block Rewards comes to mind. Scott Dettles, he's building more for this like future. He's saying this is where we see things are going, and we want to be there to service that world. But the companies that are winning the most, the biggest companies today, are the ones that are winning during the transition. So just kind of a random thought there. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but I got more questions for you.
Yeah, I think Bitcoin is in a constant state of growth, right? And so you need to be able to provide for the people and the users for where they're at right now. And you also need to think ahead 5, 10 years down the road as to what will be the problems that will be being asked then. Like one company that we worked with was Meanwhile, right? They provide Bitcoin denominated life insurance. And I mean, a couple of years ago, that would have been impossible to create. Now it's possible, but still, it's possible to make. But people think it's a weird thing. But probably in 10 years, that might be a normal path for you to get life insurance denominated in Bitcoin, right? Why would you want to get a payout for your family of $1 million in 40, 50 years from now when you know that that payment's not going to be worth what it is today?
Yeah.
Whereas you could guarantee a larger Bitcoin payout than what you put into it. And yeah, that is something that you would want for your family in the future. So these financial products, as it weird as it is for a cypherpunk to say, yeah, insurance and Bitcoin, it's coming, right? It's the maturation of an asset, and this thing is going to be the bedrock of finance for the world. So all these products are going to exist on top of Bitcoin eventually.
I want to go back to something you said earlier, really quick, just to hone in on it. You guys posted Matt Odell's presentation at MIT today. It's Tuesday, April 8th. You guys have just it's so much news coming out related to Bitcoin, but Matt said something that was similar to what you said. He said, where is it? I came to the conclusion that I had to do more. That's what he said. So like he came to the conclusion that he had to do more for the Bitcoin space, or just to align his life with Bitcoin. And that's really at the core of what I'm curious to talk to people about. Like, what is it that drives you to build Bitcoin news? I want to get a little bit more into like, how do you guys measure success? Like, what's the goal? Are you bringing new, completely uninitiated people into Bitcoin? Are you more focused on inspiring and maybe, I don't know, you just talk to me about how you approach thinking about the people that you're making the content for, the message that you're delivering them ultimately, and like what you'd like for the takeaway or the action to be.
Yeah, it's a great question. In terms of who we're building it for, I think Bitcoin News is useful for both the hardcore Bitcoiner, somebody who's been in the game for 5, 10 years, and the brand new initiate into Bitcoin itself, right? I think we've put a lot of time into building out our reach over the last 2 years. We've got over 225,000 followers on X now. And through that, you interact with people from all different walks of life, right? And so there's definitely haters who comment on a regular basis saying that Bitcoin's a joke, it's going to fail, it's old tech, whatever. And you're also interacting with like Saifedean today, quote tweeted one of the videos that we posted, right? So, I mean, that's the amazing thing about social media is your ability to speak to anyone, reach to anyone, and be part of the conversation if you are just consistent and put out quality. And if you're doing it on a daily basis for 2 years, I think we've worked up to a position in the community where we provide a useful service to people from all walks of life. And it's fun to break out of the Bitcoin echo chamber, right? When something goes viral and people from all different spheres are commenting on something. But at the end of the day, they see that Bitcoin B, right? They see Bitcoin News in our name. And I think that's just the one thing that I think is so important is the amount of touch points that the average person needs to go from saying, oh yeah, I've heard of Bitcoin before, to actually having any idea what Bitcoin is so much, right? So the more that it's normalized, the more that it's talked about, the more that you can show it through different lenses, whether it's the mining or the politics or the unbanked person in Kenya who is able to use their cell phone as a bank account and can buy stuff from the local village store using Bitcoin. I think all these things are so important to show the world on a daily basis so that next person who doesn't really know what Bitcoin is can get interested in it and then see, oh wow, this could really improve my life.
I really think it's a great observation or approach that you guys have where you're not just saying, oh, look at this is Larry Fink's newest little 30-second clip on Bitcoin or something. Like today, you guys posted a video. I believe there's a hairdresser in Mexico City or something like that, a tattoo artist. And it's just like a quick little vignette story about somebody grassroots on the ground. They maybe don't have great access to banks in Mexico. I think it's like 50% of people don't even have a bank account or a debit card, one of the two. And so, yeah, I'm very, in terms of people appreciating Bitcoin for what it is, I think in the US, we just don't appreciate all of the properties of Bitcoin because we don't need to. We look at it as a store of value. We have relatively to other countries a solid financial system. We can trust the money in our bank. If we withdraw it, it's going to be there generally. But what are some of the stories that you've seen maybe that I've missed in your guys' feed around emerging markets? Is it Africa? Is it Latin America? Anything come to mind as far as just cool, unique stories of grassroots Bitcoin adoption?
Yeah, so I mean, of course, El Salvador has been in the news in terms of Bitcoin since 2021 when they passed the Bitcoin law, making Bitcoin legal tender. But just this year in 2025, they made a deal with the IMF that made them take a step back and sort of rescind Bitcoin as legal tender. They can no longer accept it as payment for taxes. And there definitely has been some weirdness just in the way that the government has communicated about this deal and what is the official status of Bitcoin in the country moving forward since they've made this deal. But one thing you cannot deny is that El Salvador has had this amazing explosion of Bitcoin education. Whether that's Me Premier Bitcoin, John Denny, who is a former writer, journalist, IMF protester himself. He moved down to El Salvador during COVID, and in 2021, when they passed the Bitcoin law, he started this grassroots Bitcoin uh, education initiative, right? So they've been providing free classes to the communities, teaching them everybody about Bitcoin, what it is, how to use it, and how it can change your life. And so through that, they have been working with the local government as well and have initiated classes within the local high schools. You have kids graduating with Bitcoin diplomas, right? They're the only school system in the world that is offering Bitcoin diplomas, which is super cool. You've got this guy who goes by Papusas G. He's a El Salvadorian guy, and he brings the tech into the classroom. So he's teaching high school kids how to use a BitAxe, how to set up a Bitcoin node, how to use a cold card, right? All this hands-on knowledge that is so valuable to be teaching to the youth just about financial literacy, but from an actual tech standpoint. It's super cool, and we love to share those videos. And it's spreading around the world, right? This Me Premier Bitcoin that started in El Salvador, now they've got nodes or different groups of teachers working in countries around the world, right? I think in 20 plus countries. So El Salvador, and one more education initiative there is Cubo Plus. So they take a cohort of, I think it's around 20 of the most talented developers from around the end of high school age, and they send them to special classes with Bitcoin developers, famous ones like Giacomo Zucco. They send these kids to Switzerland, to Lugano, to study there and work with developers there. And so I mean, between this AI law that they just passed and this focus on Bitcoin tech, the kids who have been in high school for the last 3 or 4 years, they get a front row seat to the Bitcoin revolution, and this next wave of developers that actually move Bitcoin forward could be coming out of the smallest Latin American nation, right? It's mind-boggling to think about, but it's reality.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, John is a legend for sure, and I'd love to get him on the show at one point. When you think about investing in Bitcoin, like getting Bitcoin exposure versus buying actual Bitcoin, I want to get your take on this. There's a number of ways that you can get exposure to the price of Bitcoin, right? ETFs, there's futures, stocks like MSTR. How do you think about divvying up, allocating to actual Bitcoin versus MSTR or something else?
As they say, you can never have enough Bitcoin, right? Yeah, but at some point, you want to have a stack goal in mind, and you want to work towards that, and you want to have that base foundation. And I think that's the most important thing to establish when you get into this space is to get actual Bitcoin, withdraw it to cold storage, know how to secure it properly, and how to move it when need be, and proper security around that. But the funny thing is, after being in this space for a number of years now, is that yes, hardcore Bitcoiners are all about cold storage, but for the average person, they're just not that into personal responsibility, to be completely honest. I mean, it is kind of scary. I mean, to have the majority of your net worth
Yeah.
backed up by 12 words that you need to either memorize or put into steel and never lose, it can be a little nerve wracking. And in this world that we've pretty much covered with bubble wrap, it's really hard for a lot of people to take that much responsibility over their financial life. So I understand that while I would advise that cold storage Bitcoin is obviously the smartest way to protect your wealth for the decades to come, other options do make sense for certain people, right? If you have a 401k, you can't be buying cold storage Bitcoin with it, but you can invest into Bitcoin proxies like MSTR. Yeah, in terms of investing in strategy, formerly MicroStrategy, I would say if you've established your Bitcoin stack and you have a vehicle that you can only invest in stocks with, then yeah, then go for it. I do think that Michael is creating a Bitcoin bank essentially. He's got over 520,000 plus Bitcoin now, over 2.3% of all the Bitcoin that will ever exist. So this is an unbelievable financial foundation, which they are just beginning to think of the ways in which they're able to use it in the future. But right now, they're just creating financial products that essentially capture the volatility of Bitcoin and offer that to people who can't directly invest in Bitcoin, such as insurance companies and whatnot. So I do think that it does offer some upside, but as we've seen just in the last cycle and now in this one, it can go up vertical, but it can also come down very, very hard. So yeah, I mean these other ways of investing in Bitcoin, there are certain purposes and situations in which it could work right for you, but there's nothing like cold hard
Like the
BTC.
real deal. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, I agree 100%. One of my controversial opinions, and it's not like I'm that attached to it, but it's just MicroStrategy is a shitcoin. I mean, yes, you're getting Bitcoin exposure, but you're now taking on the risk of Coinbase custody, MicroStrategy, strategic management decisions, uh, policies that could change things. Like you said, in 4 years, there could be a different new administration comes in and says, look at how well MicroStrategy's done. Why don't we go ahead and, apply some type of policy towards them? I just think generally people are not valuing optionality as much as they should. I think people undervalue two things: optionality and peace of mind. Peace of mind, once you do the work to understand your self custody and you feel good about it, you sleep so well at night because there's 0% chance that you wake up tomorrow and you can't get access to your bank account, which is an experience that millions of people have had all over the world. People in the United States, people in Canada, Western nations. have had that experience. I have not, but I can imagine that would be a pretty scary thing. Tony from the Bitcoin Way tells his story of being in Lebanon, waking up and having all of his money gone, and that waking him up to this whole thing. But definitely start with the cold storage, learn the technicals, and then you'll be more bullish and more convicted when your MicroStrategy goes down twice as much as your Bitcoin. You'll won't freak out too much. So do people become apathetic to hearing all this bullish news? Like you hear Bitcoin's becoming a strategic reserve asset, MicroStrategy, all these things. Do people just kind of, is it almost like we've heard so much bullish news that like nothing is like shocking for people? Like what, I guess the question is, what would shock you? What, as the founder owner of Bitcoin News, what piece of news would surprise you in 2025?
If China goes for Bitcoin. I mean, we are just in the last week, right? We've entered into a whole new world. The global economic table, as we've known it, has just been upended, and new rules are being written on a daily basis. And everything that we're seeing makes it very clear that a neutral reserve asset is necessary. The dollar as the world reserve currency has played its part. It's definitely led to this explosion in globalization that we've seen over the last 70 years with very quick supply chains and an interconnected world. But I mean, of course, there's Triffin's dilemma, and it's gutted our industrial base here in America. And there's a lot of downsides to the fact that America can print as much money as it wants and hand it out to the world in exchange for its goods, and that those who are closest to the money printer derive the most benefit, whereas the rest of the world, including average American citizens, must deal with the side effects such as reduced purchasing power over time and just debt. You know, the world is drowning in debt, and as history has proven, it can only go so far before there needs to be a reset, and we seem to be at a time of reset. So yeah, I mean, the gold is getting sucked out of the vault in Switzerland, coming back to America. I'm sure that China has way more gold than they have told us in their official reports. But again, gold is a old cumbersome metal that costs a lot to store and to transport. And in a modern technological digital world, it makes sense to have final settlement be transferred over the internet. And this madness that we're seeing right now in the markets, and especially between China and America, I think it makes it very clear that these neutral reserve assets are extremely important, and gold was the old one, and I don't think gold is necessarily going away, but Bitcoin makes a whole lot of sense as to why it would be useful today.
I agree 100%. I mean, if as soon as either China or the US publicly starts buying Bitcoin, it's a domino effect, right? Because strategically, this is Jason Lowery's thesis, and the concept of game theory gets thrown around so much in Bitcoin, but I look at it like when I'm trying to articulate to normies, like where Bitcoin is at in its life cycle. I'm like, do you not see the news? Like the president's talking about it. Like it's on the biggest banks in the world are saying that it's, the best performing asset, which it is. And they're, marketing and advertising products around it. Like how can you not be insanely bullish? But there is this, there's the market and news. They sort of have this interaction, right? Like people will associate movements in the market to things that happen in the news or vice versa. How do you think about how markets and news relate in Bitcoin specifically?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's a funny dynamic. I think that nothing plays better, gets people more hyped up than price. Really, number goes up is the best advertisement by far. But when I got on board with Bitcoin News was the beginning of 2023 at the absolute bottom of the bear market, essentially. And there wasn't much good news at that time. There was crackdowns from the government looking in the blow up of FTX, the investigations in terms of that. Elizabeth Warren was establishing her anti-crypto army, and the SEC was extremely anti-digital assets, anti-Bitcoin. But what did we see? We saw just that was January of 23. And then in March, we saw the regional banking crisis. And that brought renewed interest to Bitcoin. And that sort of woke Bitcoin up from the bottom of the bear and brought it from the teens up into the 20,000s, right? And it's been this slow and gradual march up from 2023, where it was, I think the regional banking crisis was the major news of that year, up until the rumors of the ETF. And then come in early 2024, we had the launch of the ETF, and that was pretty much the big story of 2024. That and MicroStrategy and further corporate adoption. And now we're in 2025, and the story is governments are here, right? And so it's funny, like 2023 and 2024 were both 100% gainer years, but they felt like slow grinds up, and we're waiting for Bitcoiners. People in general are very hard to please, right? And so no matter how much it goes up, you always want it to go up more, and the fact that when it does, like I remember the euphoria of 2021, right? I mean, when Elon announced that he was buying and it shot up to 50,000 for the first time, people were like freaking out, you know. There hasn't been much of that, I would say, around Trump's win in November of 24, and we shot up from 69,000 up to straight through the 80s up into the 90s. That was a pretty euphoric feeling for about a week or so there, but still not the same prolonged euphoria that we felt for months as we did in 2021. So I still think that there's more to go in this bull run. I don't think that we're over. This feels pretty mid-cycle slump to me. But yeah, the news and price play a funny role. I mean, there was all this bullish news within the last 2 months or so, and price has just been sort of grinding down. So it's an interesting dynamic, but price going up is the best news for Bitcoin.
It's for sure. I mean, I almost think it's harder to learn about Bitcoin during a bull market because you focus on the news and the things at the surface level instead of going down into the technicals of Bitcoin. So I do think it kind of takes a bear market to really get conviction around Bitcoin. And so, yeah, I think at some point it happens. But I was thinking about this before this podcast. Potentially, tell me what you think about this. The tariffs, Trump's tariffs, are not necessarily totally artificial, but they're an influence on markets that was not necessarily expected, or that isn't necessarily natural in that sense. Could potentially a market drawdown, sell off, whatever, lead to the money printer coming back on, interest rates coming down, liquidity going up, and the cycles itself breaking just altogether? Because if you look at the top of the last cycle to potentially the top of this cycle, if you apply a 4-year time window on that, we're looking at later this year being the end of the 4-year traditional business, like Bitcoin cycle. So do you think that that is a potentially viable thesis, that could happen, that the cycles could break and we could see just a massive longer bull market? Or is that just a little bit of grasping for straws?
I do think there's a lot of weight behind the idea that the traditional 4-year cycle has sort of seen its course, just in the fact that there's 95%, sorry, not 95, but over 90% of all the Bitcoin to be mined has been mined, right? Over 19 million of the 21 million has been discovered. And before, during the previous cycles, I mean, we went from 50 Bitcoin being mined every 10 minutes down to 25, right? And so that's a big difference. That's going to have a notable impact on the market. Going from 6 Bitcoin mined every 10 minutes to 3, I think has less of an impact, especially because most of it is, as I said, distributed, right? It's in the hands of the people who want it. So In terms of the halving cycles, yes. I mean, I can't believe it was a year ago essentially that we had the last halving, right? April
Yeah.
20th last year. And so that means that with it's usually 12 to 18 months after the halving is when we see this exponential blow off top. Um, will we see that this time around? I don't know, but it seems, I think, less likely. I do think that we're just in this new phase of adoption where the institutions are here. There seems to be a constant MicroStrategy bid underneath the market. BlackRock, they're buying for their ETF. Nation states are interested. So I do think that there could be phase shifts, like major jumps, mainly due to crises, right? Mainly due to economic shocks, such as a black swan events like COVID or 2008, that the whole world turns on the money printers and then Bitcoin jumps from 100K to 500 within a month or two, right? I think that that could happen, but the without those black swans, I think that we're going to see a gradual grinding up as it just becomes more mature and the vast majority of Bitcoin has already been mined.
It's a very good point you made about how much Bitcoin has been mined. Like the scarcity of Bitcoin, like people just, it's hard to wrap your head around that 95% of something has already been issued. It's already out there. There's only 5% left, and the nation states are just getting here. So um, take with that information what you will. Um, Rob, I want to ask you about just your personal uh, growth around making content. I love that you've put your face out there. You've been making these reels where you put news articles and various things pop up on the screen. They're always very educational. I think you do a great job with them. What's been just your experience so far, you know, cutting your teeth? Obviously you have the background in media that made it a little easier, but what's it been like to just put yourself a little bit more out there, and what have been the reactions to that?
Yeah, I mean, you can just do things, right? It's funny how
Yeah.
in the first year or so of Bitcoin news, yeah, I really didn't put my face out there much. I really let the brand speak and try to be this impartial Bitcoin news source. But people really like a brand a whole lot more when they can tie a face to it, right? When they know that they know the person that's behind it. And I think that's been very important for the next phase of growth for Bitcoin News is for me to get out there more. And I think that these reels are a great way for me to do it. So yeah, multiple times a week, usually about 3 times, I will take a big news story and then condense it down into 60 to 90 seconds. And yeah, I have the charts and the facts thrown up behind me.
Yep.
And it's been fun. I mean, my whole entire media career, I really was focused on. I was shooting, I was editing, I was directing, and producing. So yeah, making sure that the final product presented to people was awesome, but never myself as that product. But it's been putting myself out there. I mean, it's been great to just learn like the art of script writing, right? Creating a hook that captures people's attention, and then also being able to perform it, right? You need to have that energy, and each line needs to be delivered correctly and needs to be audible and powerful and have a cadence to it and a rhythm and have it all be kind of sing-songy, so that it can just wash over someone and they can absorb the information and it can go down as sweet as sugar, right? So it's been a lot of fun. I can definitely see the progression in my ability to make these things and pump them out. And we've had some success. Had the first one hit 1 million views on Instagram. Just this week, it added up to 1 million, and then last week, like we had a couple that had 250,000, 350,000 views. So yeah, it seems to be getting out there and resonating.
Yeah, and very valuable information too. A lot of these reels you watch, you're like, oh man, I wish I didn't watch that. I didn't get any value from it. But yeah, if anyone's listening, where should they find these reels? Is it Instagram's number one, YouTube?
Yeah, so we post them everywhere, right?
Mhm.
That's a great thing about the short form reel format is that they go so well on so many different platforms. But yeah, you can find them on our X, Bitcoin Newscom, well, or growing pretty quickly on Instagram now. Yeah, Bitcoin Newscom over there as well, TikTok, YouTube, all the places you'd expect.
Epic. It's a different question, but how has Bitcoin opened you up to different ways of living, hobbies, studies, even maybe how has it impacted your values as a human being?
Yeah, I mean, my life has changed a lot since getting into Bitcoin in 2020, and I mean, I would say I wasn't. Uh, Health was not a priority back then, and getting into Bitcoin and the culture has changed that for me. Stop smoking, right? I met a girl, married her, and we're expecting our first child this summer, right?
Dude, you did not tell
Yeah,
me that. Get out of here.
yeah,
Get
yeah,
out of
yeah.
here. Amazing.
Yes, sir. So yeah,
Wow.
I mean, it gives you that long-term outlook, right? Bitcoin really helps you put away your your preference for things in the immediate and try to zoom out and see what's important in life for the long run. And yeah, I mean, it's been really quite the blessing. Really has helped me grow as a human being, and I really attribute a lot of that to, I mean, Bitcoin itself, but the community, right, and all the different aspects of it and how it touches your life.
Yeah, well said, man. Yeah, I think there's a lot of these tropes or these things that Bitcoiners tend to talk about or share, like health hacks, biohacking, avoiding contaminants in the environment's a big one, like the non-stick pans, like just various things, seed oils, things that you wouldn't necessarily associate as bad for your health until you really get into the the nitty gritty Bitcoin community. These people that are doing the deep dives on this stuff. Yeah, before we were recording the podcast, you were telling me you got a new fitness regime, a new protocol.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's crazy. Americans think that you're healthy, but a lot of us are walking around technically obese, right? I mean, and I was like over around 20% body fat, right? And I mean, I don't think I look fat, but I mean, from a technical standpoint, that's not peak health, right? And so, I mean, to be in the athletic range, you want to be down but around 15%, right? And so that's the goal right now. And so, yeah, cutting out carbs, right? Being more meat focused, definitely avoiding seed oils. It takes a lot of discipline, and I think that's another thing Bitcoin gives you is discipline.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, the discipline not to spend money because when you know you can store it in Bitcoin, it's a lot easier to not go buy something that's going to give you the quick win, the short-term satisfaction when you're looking at it like, well, this could be $10,000 value in terms of Bitcoin today. You buy $100, it's going to be worth $10,000 at some point. So your $100 dinner out with your wife or your girlfriend, whatever, it means a lot more. So I've definitely experienced that as well. So I didn't get to ask you earlier, but I want to ask you what price this year, 2025. We don't love to talk about price around here, but we'll bring it up because, as you said, it is the number one tool for getting people interested to learn more about what is ultimately a freedom movement and a movement of individuals, right? It's people that are doing cool stuff like yourself, building things, bringing your gifts to the world. So we thank you for that. But what price of Bitcoin in 2025 would surprise you?
I mean, there's been talk of Bitcoin matching gold's market cap, right? And so now gold is 20 trillion market cap. Bitcoin is just under 2 trillion, right? So it'd have to 10x from here. So Bitcoin would essentially have to be $1 million to match gold's market cap. Do I think that's happening this cycle? Probably not. I do think by the end of the year, the money printers are going to be turned on. There's so much chaos in the world right now. Bitcoin is the world's best liquidity sponge, and the move that we've seen in gold going from 2,000 to 3,000 is pretty unprecedented. And usually gold moves first and then Bitcoin follows, but even more violently to the upside. So, I mean, we hit 108 this year. Do I think we could go to 220 by 6 months from now, 8 months from now? Yeah. I think that that's a pretty safe bet to say 200 by January 1st, 2026.
I love it. I'll take the over on that. Yeah, man. This has been super fun. I don't really have much more to ask you, and I know it's late on the East Coast, but it's been cool to just kind of get to hear a little bit behind the scenes, Bitcoin news, what you're doing there. What's the vision for the rest of the year? What are you working on? Building new initiatives for the business, traveling anywhere, conferences? Just talk to me about the rest of 2025.
Yeah, Vegas is coming up quick, end of May, and we will certainly be there. We are media partners. We'll be on the floor. We'll be interviewing people, having fun there. Looking forward to it. Looking forward to seeing you there. Um, when it comes to Bitcoin news in general, I mean, we want to keep growing. We've got a presence on almost every platform, right? Except for Facebook. But we want to be, when people think of Bitcoin news, I want them to think of us, right? So we've got to be everywhere. We got to continue to be putting out the content, and also, I mean, as a business with an audience, you need a product, right? And so I think we've done really good at building up that platform. Now it's, do we want to go into merch? Do we want to sell Bitcoin products? We'll see how that develops over the next 6 months or so, but I think that's definitely a direction that we want to go in.
I love it. Well, there's no map for where you're going because you're a media company, yes, but you're definitely a Bitcoin company as well. So definitely be curious to see how you guys move from a business standpoint in the future. And if anyone wants to follow that's not already following, I'm sure you're already following Bitcoin news. Where can they find you, Rob? And appreciate your time very much, man.
Yeah, just head on over to bitcoinnews.com. You can find the links to all of our socials there, and sign up for the newsletter. Every Monday it comes out, gives you a roundup of everything that happened in Bitcoin, and is a great way to save you tens of hours a week on from scrolling X.
There you go. There's some tangible value right there. Appreciate you, Rob. Thank you, man.
Thank you, Kyle.